Imagine waking up in a place where even fire is afraid to exist. The wind blows like an invisible blade, cutting the skin down to the bone. The firewood is covered in ice. The flames refuse to be born. And the cold seems to laugh at anyone who dares to fight it. Now imagine having to cook, not for comfort, but for survival. In the northern winters, fire was more precious than gold. Without it, there was no food, no warmth, no life. But what happens when even wood, the fuel of existence, freezes solid? When the sea turns to stone, and the wind kills every spark before it can grow. The Vikings faced this white hell every year, and yet they managed to eat, hunt, and even feast, even when the world was buried in ice and the sun vanished for months. They learned to make fire without dry wood, to cook through blizzards, and to turn cold itself into an ally. In this video, you'll discover how the Vikings cooked when fire refused to exist, how they turned ice into heat and smoke into flavor. Prepare yourself, because their secret wasn't strength. It was wild ingenuity. It was survival, where even fire freezes. The northern cold was not just a season. It was an ancient, relentless enemy. When winter arrived, rivers froze to their depths. The wind tore the skin from your lips, and firewood, the heart of every home, turned to stone. Damp wood, soaked with ice, would not burn even under the hottest sparks. For the Vikings, cooking in this white inferno was more than a challenge. It was a matter of life and death. Inside their longhouses, fire was more than comfort. It was existence itself. It cooked their food, dried their clothes, warmed their bodies, and carried their prayers to the gods. But when the wood froze, the fire weakened, and fear spread. Without fire, food rotted, warmth vanished, and the cold did what it did best. It killed slowly. But the Vikings did not wait for mercy. They created heat where there was none. The preparation began long before the harshest winter. During the summer, they collected dry wood, birch, ash, and pine, and stacked it beneath large layers of turf and moss, protected from moisture. That wood was the village's treasure, guarded as if it were food. When the cold became unbearable, they used only small amounts of wood to light the main fire, and fed the flames with what today would seem unthinkable: dried dung, animal bones, and frozen blocks of peat. The dung, carefully dried during summer, burned slowly and released a dense, steady heat, perfect for cooking. Bones, when broken and mixed with peat, created strong embers capable of lasting the entire night. And when nothing else worked, they turned to an ancient trick: animal oil and whale fat. A single drop could keep a flame alive for hours. Inside the longhouse, the air grew thick and gray. The central fire burned low, covered with black stones that absorbed the heat and released it slowly. Women cooked over these stones, using iron or clay cauldrons hung from chains of forged iron. The sound of boiling broth mixed with the distant howl of the wind, the sound of life defying winter. And while the wood outside remained frozen solid, the Vikings cooked with fire made from everything the earth and sea could give them: bones, fat, peat, even dried moss. Each element had its purpose, its secret, its meaning. The smell was strong, almost unbearable, but it meant one thing: the fire was alive, and with it, hope. Because in the Viking world, cooking wasn't just preparing food, it was taming the cold. Outside, the world was dead. No birds, no running rivers, only the wind and the distant crack of ice breaking in the mountains. But inside the longhouse, life endured. And the Vikings' secret was understanding that fire didn't need to be large, only constant. They didn't cook over roaring flames, but over silent embers, guarded like relics. Each family kept a small core of fire burning throughout the entire winter, day and night. Even when everyone slept, someone was chosen to watch over it. If the flame died, it wasn't just the meal that would be lost, it was the warmth, the shelter, the very life of the house. Reigniting a fire in the extreme cold was almost impossible, so they hid embers beneath ash and moss, a simple trick that preserved heat for hours. With this low fire, they cooked slowly. Thick soups, smoked meats, barley porridge, and fish boiled with animal fat. The recipes weren't about flavor, they were about endurance. The body needed fat to fight the cold, and the Vikings knew that instinctively. They boiled bones to extract marrow, mixed fat with barley flour, and made broths so dense they seemed to cling to the ribs. When the firewood was completely frozen, they dug into the ground itself. Beneath the frozen soil lay layers of dry peat and stones that still held warmth from the previous season. The stones were heated in the fire and then placed inside large iron cauldrons, boiling water and cooking food without the need for direct flames. It was the method archaeologists now call stone boiling, cooking with the heat of stones instead of fire. On stormy nights, when not even the embers could survive, the Vikings turned to their most precious resource, whale fat, thick and sticky. It was burned in small stone lamps. The smell was terrible, but the heat, dense and steady, was enough to warm a cauldron and keep a meal alive. There was something almost ritualistic about the act. The women bent over the low fire, their faces glowing in the red light of the flames. Steam rose and mingled with the smoke, drawing shapes that seemed to dance on the darkened ceiling. Outside, the cold tried to invade. Inside, the smell of fat, meat, and smoke formed an invisible barrier against death. Fire, ice, and human warmth, all united in a fragile balance. Each meal was a victory over winter. Each drop of fat, a reminder that survival wasn't just about eating, it was about fighting. Because for the Vikings, cooking in the cold wasn't an ordinary task. It was a sacred ritual of survival, a silent conversation between man, earth, and fire. As winter deepened, the sun vanished for weeks at a time. Day and night became one, a bluish twilight where time itself seemed frozen with the land. But even in that darkness, the Vikings kept the fire alive. And when hunger struck, they turned the little they had into feasts of endurance. The food was simple, but crafted with ancestral wisdom. In massive iron cauldrons suspended over the embers, they cooked thick stews of seal meat, dried fish, and barley. They mixed whale fat, coagulated blood, and herbs stored from the summer. The taste was strong, almost wild, but it was the taste of survival. Every spoonful was a small victory against the cold creeping into their bones. Some dishes were made with no visible flame at all. Stones heated in the heart of the longhouse were placed inside pits dug in the floor and covered with leaves and furs. On top, the Vikings laid meat and fish wrapped in damp moss. The stones cooked the food slowly, releasing thick steam that spread through the house. It was as if the earth itself was breathing with the fire. Outside, snow fell silently, covering the world in a white shroud. Inside, the air was heavy, hot, filled with the smell of smoke and fat. Women stirred the cauldron with wooden spoons. Men sharpened blades or repaired oars, and children watched the fire as one might gaze upon a god. The fire wasn't just a tool, it was a living spirit, a presence that demanded respect. While they cooked, women often whispered quiet prayers to Frigg, goddess of the hearth, or Sul, goddess of the sun, asking for the light to return and for the fire never to die. The sound of the wind beating against the walls seemed like a distant reply from the gods, cold, indifferent, but always there. Meals were not silent, they were ceremonies. The first piece of meat was offered to the fire, a gesture of gratitude. Then the head of the household distributed the food, starting with the elders, then the women and children. Eating together meant more than sharing food. It meant sharing warmth, sharing life. And at the end of the meal, when the fire began to fade, came the most symbolic act of all. The hot ashes were carefully gathered and stored in clay pots. They would be used to rekindle the fire the next day, the same fire that had fed them that night. It was a continuous, almost spiritual cycle. The fire nourished the body, and the body in return kept the fire alive. In that world without light, the act of cooking was the only point of warmth and hope. A small sun, crafted by their own hands, and while the cold roared outside, the Vikings ate, prayed, and waited, because they knew that if the fire survived until dawn, they would too. In the final hours of the night, when the wind finally calmed and the fire burned low, the longhouse seemed to breathe along with its people. The embers pulsed in the dark like glowing hearts, and the air, thick with smoke and fat, formed a warm haze that wrapped around everything. Outside, the world was a grave of ice. Inside, the fire still lived, small, stubborn, eternal. The empty cauldrons still released steam, and the smell of cooked meat and burnt peat mixed with the ancient smoke that clung to the walls. It was the scent of survival. Men and women settled beneath their furs, exhausted, while the fire, now reduced to glowing embers, continued its silent work, protecting, warming, keeping alive the invisible flame of hope. Every meal made in that cold was a testament to ingenuity. Every spark struck an act of defiance, and every drop of fat that burned was a reminder that fire and frost were not enemies. They were forces in balance, locked in a deadly dance the Vikings had learned to master. Fire did not conquer the cold. It invited it to coexist, and that was the true wisdom of the northern peoples, understanding that warmth is not born from comfort, but from struggle. That survival is not about defeating winter, but enduring it, one day at a time. When the pale sun rose on the horizon, reflected in the ice like a silver blade, the Vikings awoke to another day. The embers were rekindled, the cauldron filled again, and the cycle began anew. Smoke rose in slow spirals, painting stories on the ceiling, stories of strength, faith, and endurance. The hearth fire, small and imperfect, was the heart of the North. It fed bodies, warmed souls, and united families beneath the endless darkness. Without it, there was no food. Without it, there was no life. And so, generation after generation, the Vikings continued to cook, to eat, and to survive, even when the ice tried to erase the world, because for them, fire was more than heat. It was memory, ritual, and salvation. And in the end, between ashes and snow, only one truth remained. To survive the cold was an art, and fire its most perfect creation.